Question, Derek. Seeing what we saw from the quick decision making without the ball in his hands, or with the ball in his hands and setting the screen, dribble handoff. We've seen plenty of that in the Sixers uniform. The waving Devon Booker to the other side of the floor. He knows what plays are being ran. But with Paul George in the LeBron James role, hypothetically, Tyrese Maxey in the Steph Curry role, maybe he can shoot just as good in those 2 minutes and 30 seconds and win the game like that. We have seen the semblance of it. But in that type of role where you have those two substituting LeBron James and Steph Curry, is that something that you could also see translating to the NBA season where Nick Nurse may implement some stuff because Embiid trusted even more, knowing that, wow, it is LeBron James and it is Steph Curry. We're talking about two arguably top 10 players of all time. We do have a Hall of Famer in Paul George. You can argue if you want, argue with somebody else. I'm not arguing that. Paul George is a Hall of Famer just because. That's the Basketball Hall of Fame, not the NBA Hall of Fame. That type of stuff works in the U.S. in the Olympic play. Can that stuff now translate to the Sixers?
Can we get someone in the Devin Booker role? That would be great.
That would be great too.
And watching him scale back and really commit defensively.
I give him a lot of credit for. He was one of the guys I think changed the most in terms of what he does play to play and was very good.
No,
and defensively,
it was
you talk about that.
About back at Kentucky.
Saw it in 21 too. Saw it at 21 when they were doing all of that run.
But to your point, I think there's a look. Paul George isn't that much of a facsimile of LeBron at this stage of his career. He's not going to do nearly as much. I don't think on ball, and he's not as creative of a passer as LeBron is.
It's an understatement.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But I do certainly think the Maxey Steph parallel is something that he can learn from and work from. And like I said, that's why one of my main takeaways is I want to see him leveling dudes with those, including off-ball screens when we come back here. So yeah, I certainly think there's some stuff you can take from this experience that directly correlates with how he plays with Maxey.
Yeah, and look, I would say we're focused a lot on Joel and his role in all this. I would guarantee you Nick Nurse is watching very closely the last month and a half or so. Number one, he's said it and was an international coach at one point. He's a big believer in the value of international basketball and how that translates into whether it's an individual's play or how that comes over to the team. So I bet you Nick Nurse has been looking at some of the stuff they've been running, how Joel has been used when he's not, at his base of operations, we'll call it, around the nail or occasionally posting up near the basket. I think one thing that maybe Nick and other people could stress to Joel, I go over some tape with him, I really liked his off-ball movement when he wasn't getting the ball late in the Olympics. I thought he did a good job of okay, I need to come up for a ball screen. And then LeBron's like, no, I don't need that. Or somebody else has to come over. Joel then did a good job of doing the early work to get in position for rebounds. And maybe Joel didn't get the rebound himself, but he's drawing, whether it's Wemby, Rudy Gobert, Jokic, whoever it is. And that's opening up opportunities for LeBron to get an offensive rebound, Kevin Durant to get an offensive rebound, whoever to come in and crash. Or occasionally, Joel's tipping out shots to some of his teammates, and he's doing more of the true, quote-unquote, big man things that I think a lot of people around Philadelphia want him to do. And so you can see in this environment the full package, right? He has the number one option scorer package, right? He can go on a run where he scores 7 straight points in 2 minutes, changes the game, can space out to 3 against Brazil, hits a bunch of jumpers and gets going to open up the elimination games that they had. And you see all of that, but then you also see, as Derek is alluding to, the off-ball screens and, crushing a guy, not just up top on pick and rolls, but somebody cutting along the baseline, just leveling a dude so that Tyrese Maxey can come around, curl for a wing 3, a corner 3, or even attack a closeout then. And then Joel, because of that initial screen, maybe he gets an easy look at the rim. And I think when you play with guys at the level he just did, you see the logical end of, maybe what coaches have tried to stress to you and tell you, but these guys can actually do it on a regular basis. Hey, give the ball up and it will come back to you or the team will score. It will be tougher to convince him to do that when it's 39-year-old Kyle Lowry that's coming off of a screen or rookie Jared McCain, whoever it might be. But you just have building these positive habits and just seeing that lead to success, it directly translates into, I won an important game. I won a gold medal with the rest of these guys from my country. I think that will go a long way for this guy.
Seeing him do that before, I mean, it was great to see it when he was setting those screens in the moment, and you're just like, damn, look how open Steph Curry is for that three-pointer, where he's lining it up. He's finding the seams on the basketball just simply because he's that open. And when he's doing that, it made me think back to, as you guys are talking about Tyrese Maxey, the J.J. Redick action along the baseline where he would set those screens there for him on the dribble handoff or just simply on that pin down, coming off of the baseline, the way that he runs the way that he did. And even someone like Seth Curry, who's a little bit slower in that way, but it was effective because of how good of the shooters that they were. And now that Maxey has turned into the type of shooter, and jokingly talking about, and we'll talk about Curry and that shooting display and how things ended up in the next segment, but we've seen Maxey do that. We've seen him effectively shoot that way in games. Go back to the Knicks game, of course, in that game 5 at the Garden. We've seen it plenty of times in other parts of the season where Maxey will go off and do those types of things, and we'll go back in the postgame and talk about the stretch that he had to help win that game. But to do this with Curry, knowing that Maxey is that much of an improved shooter, for where he is now at this stage of his career going into year number 5, and how much trust Embiid does have in Maxey now, I cannot wait to see what that looks like when he comes back and what type of stuff that Nick Nurse takes away from this Olympic experience and brings back to Philadelphia for those very reasons. And someone said, I think it was AC Phillips saying, well, maybe Paul George can play in the KD role a little bit. He's not LeBron James in that way, but the scoring a little bit off of Embiid with those two guys out there on the floor. We have been focused so much on Curry and with Embiid, and Curry with, LeBron with Embiid, and then mixing in a little Devin Booker. And Paul George may be a little bit different in the scoring way. He's not Kevin Durant, so nobody's saying that. But in that way, where Embiid was screening for so many different types of players out there on the floor and the different types of things that he was doing out there on the floor, all of that is just simply going to be beneficial for this guy when he does come back for the NBA season. So much that they can take away from, so many things that we're probably not even touching on because of how those guys look at basketball and what they may take away from this whole experience and being out there and seeing what Embiid does, and then just himself with the IQ that he has and how that stuff might be implemented into the start of the Sixers season overall.
We all silly like the mayor.